Hi everyone and welcome to the Look podcast. Today we're celebrating Pride Month with a very special conversation. We'll be talking about what it means to be LGBTQ+ and visually impaired and how that shapes your experiences of accessibility and community. I'm joined by two incredible Look mentors, Ellie and Alex, who are here to share their lived experience with us. Welcome to the podcast. Can you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your connection with Look? Maybe if we start with Ellie.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ellie. I'm 25. I've been a Look mentor for about 6 years now. I identify as queer. I use she, her pronouns, and I came out when I was about 14.
Alex?
Hey, my name is Alex. I'm 24 years old. I've been a Look mentor since 2022, so about 3 years. But prior to that, I also been a mentee as well. So quite a long history with Look UK now. I'm gay and my pronouns are he, him, and I've came out officially around 18, 19 years old.
Thank you for sharing. We're so glad to have you here joining us for this special podcast. So one of the things I think it would be great for us to talk about is representation. Pride is all about being seen, but often people with disabilities are not seen in the LGBTQ+ space or in the media. What for you do you think representation means, and do you feel like you're represented within the media or events?
I think for me representation is being seen and being understood. I'll say it's very important to have representations that reflects you, your life. Sometimes it can be putting people into a box, but sometimes it's also nice to feel belonging and be part of some sort of group. However, I think the negative side of representation, it leans towards stereotypes, and both LGBT and disability communities, they are commonly stereotyped and quite negatively stereotyped in the media and general news, which creates quite a negative feelings, not just towards the communities, but also towards yourself, if you're part of both communities or one of them. Sometimes seeing false representation can lead towards self-hatred or other problems with self-acceptance. And especially in events, a lot of nowadays Pride events, they are still can be quite overwhelming and inaccessible for VI attendees. So quite a common thing that people in VI community discuss.
I totally agree with that. I would say representation is getting better for LGBTQ+ people and also disabled people. What I would say is there really isn't at the moment that many, off the top of my head, shows or films that I can think of where you have a blind person who is LGBTQ+ as well. And I think what we're missing right now is intersectionality. The media is getting better at saying, oh, there are queer people and there are disabled people, but what it's not great at saying is there are both queer and disabled people who can be queer and disabled at the same time. And what I would love to see is just more of that, more understanding that we are complex human beings with our own thoughts and feelings. And what you said, Alex, about stereotypes, I totally agree with, because if you don't fit within the stereotype of what it means to be gay or what it means to be queer and also what it means to be blind, it kind of feels like you're being shut out of the conversation.
Do you ever feel that you have to, like, a pressure to choose which side of you is kind of being not displayed but being shown to others, or
yes,
being represented, because otherwise you're excluded from both spaces?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm too much sometimes because I've got the queer side of me and the VI side of me, and sometimes I don't feel like, if I'm talking about queer issues, I feel like maybe people don't think about my disability, and if I'm talking about disability issues, people don't think about my queerness, but they're both so intertwined, one doesn't cancel out the other. And for me, I think that there needs to be a conversation that's had where we say, actually, we can be both queer and disabled, and both of those things and both of those life experiences are deeply personal and deeply interconnected.
Yeah, completely agree. So sometimes it feels like sitting on the two chairs at the same time, quite hard to balance it out. But I think, at least from my personal perspective, I joined VI community, I joined LGBT community way earlier than VI community, so I guess sometimes it feels like that I'm more part of the first one rather than second one. But yeah, it's still quite confusing, and I think in our society we like to put everyone into a box and have a label with just one type of for each person, but in reality we all are multifaceted, and you can be both VI, you can be both queer and something else at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Do you feel that there are spaces where being visually impaired and LGBTQ plus is being represented, or at least being shown to a broader audience, whether that's TikTok or Instagram? It doesn't need to be traditional media channels as such, where you're getting kind of younger visually impaired people who are actually talking about it more openly and being that role model.
Yeah, I think now this something starts to pop up more and more. Even in traditional media, there are TV shows such as like Special, or there was AJ and the Queen, which had both disabled and
Yeah.
queer characters. So definitely some progress. Plus, I'm also part of RSBC LGBT group, so it's also a VR Pride specific thing which mixes both worlds together, which also quite a positive thing. So hopefully more and more groups like this will start to pop up, and especially nowadays because of technology, because of internet, it's easier to connect and find people who are in similar positions or have similar characteristics.
What I found really lovely is, especially with the rise of TikTok and Instagram, is that you've got a lot of influencers now who aren't afraid to talk about different parts of their identities. I mean, you've got, off the top of my head, I can think of 2 or 3, 4 or 5, actually, now I'm thinking about it, a lot of influencers who are both VI and part of the LGBTQ plus community, whether they talk about it or not. Some people choose not to, some people choose to talk about it, and obviously everyone has the right to talk about their identity versus not, it's everyone's personal choice. But what I found really freeing and really nice is that the more social media influencers and people like that we have who are open and honest about how they're feeling, the better it's going to be for, I don't know, a young VI teenager who's maybe questioning their sexuality or their gender to look at someone and say, that person is out and proud and is doing all the things I want to do, and I can take inspiration for them. And one thing I'd also say is I found that local communities are honestly quite accepting depending on where you are. So I live near Brighton at the moment, and historically that's always been a very progressive community. But even things like we have queer disabled spaces, and the fact that they've been carved out and that they've been created is so nice, because it means that I actually have an audience to talk about how I'm feeling. Like, I go to poetry jams and I met this random partially sighted woman who was just there, and I didn't expect her to be there. She didn't expect me to be there. And it was just absolutely wonderful to suddenly come across someone. And as well as that, there's a really lovely like queer disabled scene within the performing arts and within theatres, and just knowing that things are getting better gives me a lot of hope for the future.
That leads on quite interestingly to the next topic that I was keen for us to explore, was around accessibility to LGBTQ plus spaces if you have a disability, and what these spaces that you've found in your local community, how have they made those accessible to you and other people with disabilities? What kind of changes have made a big difference to you in being able to access those spaces and being able to be in a community that you can really connect with?
I'd say Pride, the big Pride events, and Alex, you spoke about this earlier, they're still quite difficult to access. They're loud, they're overwhelming. There's loads of people shouting, music, which is great, don't get me wrong, but when you're going there, and I'm lucky that I've been to a few Pride events with friends who's, I mean, none of us are able-bodied, but some of them are sighted, so we've been able to sort of muddle through it, and it was okay. But I do find Pride events to be very overwhelming, except the smaller Prides, because the smaller Prides are I find a lot friendlier, a lot nicer, you can find your feet easier, and typically when you've got disabled people who are going to Pride, we kind of all flock together anyway, so it's quite nice to be able to go with people who, like, feel the same way that you do and have the same or similar access challenges that you do. But I think what I found, as I've said earlier, with local communities is that when people make a marked effort to be accessible and to make events accessible, it really carries forward, and I can really feel when I go to an event that someone has put an effort in and someone has made sure to ask me what I need, or just ask their disabled attendees what they need, and that is such a breath of fresh air. It's definitely getting better. I want it to hurry up a bit so I can go to more events and feel like 100% safe. But yeah, I know that obviously for my disabled trans friends, it can be even more difficult for them to feel safe in spaces. But where I am at the moment, I think as long as we all work together and as long as we all make sure that we are looking out for each other and being representative, we'll be okay.
Alex, do you kind of mirror the same feeling about kind of accessibility to things like Pride events?
Yeah, absolutely. And as mentioned, together we are definitely stronger. Being stick to each other is definitely very helpful to overcome those barriers. Thankfully, lots of events, they are both Pride or mainstream events, they are getting more and more accessible, and people start to think more about wheelchair access and just general health and safety for VI people as well. So it's quite a positive thing. Now there's access card, which makes booking for lots of concerts, which can be quite also part of Pride events, such as like Kylie Minogue. It's obviously a very rainbow coded events. So yeah.
And have you found that kind of VI specific communities, whether that's Look or whether that's Visionary, have started to create more spaces that encourage that diversity and that celebration of your identity?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not part of the RSBC group. Well, I will be very shortly. I'm 25, so in my last year of being able to be part of them, but I've seen some amazing stuff that they've been doing. Look's been doing that as well. Thomas Pocklington put up a really fantastic post today or yesterday celebrating Pride, which I really appreciated because it was very honest, and I thought it was fantastic actually. And all of the charities are creating space for us. I think there needs to be even more of a push that it's not just about creating space, it's about putting us in the position where we can talk about our own experiences. It's great to put Facebook posts up, it's great to put us into the public eye as much and talk about us, but we need to be part of that conversation as well. Like, that's something that we need to be part of, and I'm hoping over this month and in the months to come, in the years to come, it will only get better. And I'm hoping that with strides like this, because of the amount of difficulties that LGBTQ people are still facing here and in other countries, it's even more important now that we stick together and that we make sure that we are being allies to ourselves and other people as much as we possibly can.
One of the questions I had for you both was if kind of spaces for disabled people or spaces for LGBTQ plus could make a small change in order to make them inclusive, what would you suggest that would be?
So yeah, I guess what changes we want to see to make LGBTQ plus places more accessible is, I think the first thing, never assume anything. So it's always nice if the events organizers or venues, they actually ask people with disabilities what they actually need, how exactly they react to X and Y, so they can make not assumptions but real expectations and real knowledge to understand what to better provide, because there are so many cases when inclusivity efforts were made, but they were made incorrectly because of assumptions and stereotypes. So
I would definitely agree with that, and I'd echo that and say be proactive. So actually engage with us. We need to work together, basically. There isn't just one or the other, because there will always be disabled people who are queer, and there'll always be queer people who are disabled. A lot of the time our experiences are quite similar, or obviously not the same, but we can all learn from each other. And I really think that organisers need to be proactive and understand that sometimes we don't know how to reach out to them because we don't know if they're going to be welcoming to us. So they need to make it 100% crystal clear that they do accept us, that they are willing to listen to us and hear us out.
Have you had an experience where an event has been particularly proactive at making sure that space felt inclusive?
Yeah, so any queer theatre performances of any kind I've ever been to have been so accommodating, whether that's because they've worked with disabled people before or just because they're particularly good. I've found that drag shows I've been to have been really, really awesome, and just in general, theatre performances which centre inclusivity, even if it's not disabled inclusivity, are fantastic and actually ask about access requirements on like the booking forms and things like that. That's something I really, really appreciate.
also there was London Fashion Week, and now they are trying to be more proactive and essentially approach people with disability first to ensure exclusivity of their events. So this February I went to one of the shows that tested audio description, and it was in a very nice accessible venue which was step free, not very far from underground station, and the staff were very supportive. They provided swatches and some touch typing tours before the actual show. So I think those types of efforts are really nice. So I think for any event organizers or venue companies, it's very beneficial to reach out to charities such as like Look UK or Thomas Pocklington Trust to ask how they can actually make everything inclusive, especially as those charities know exactly and have a very large base of VI and other disabilities, people who actually can give a real authentic input.
I would say it goes both ways as well. I think VI charities need to reach out to LGBTQ plus charities, particularly trans charities that help trans people, because I think a lot of the time trans people are the most overlooked and underrepresented part of the LGBTQ plus community. And I really think that it's high time that all charities work together, regardless of if they're LGBTQ plus charities or disabled charities, because we're all struggling, having a bit of a bad time sometimes. And I think the more we can be represented, the better.
Yeah, that was exactly the question I was going to ask, actually, was on the flip side of that, what can more VI spaces do in order to be able to support people who are going through challenges questioning their own sexuality or feeling particularly isolated around their identity? Are there any things that you would suggest that would be really, really a positive step towards making the two worlds feel more joined up?
So first of all, I think that charities need to specifically ask to hear from their LGBTQ plus members, with the understanding that they might not get a higher response rate, because some people might not want to come out, some people might not feel comfortable outing themselves or disclosing that information. But I think reaching out to the LGBT members of their organization or their charity is a huge first step, because then they can figure out what the holes are in their own activism and in their own plan for helping LGBTQ plus people. Because, you know, people can write up as many plans as they possibly want and all of that, but if they're not consulting us, then those plans are going to be useless, because if it's not something we actually need or want, then what's the point in making it? And I think reaching out to other charities would be great, but definitely be consulting with their pre-existing members to understand what they need to do and how they can best protect and support LGBT members of their charity.
Yeah, completely echoing that. And also it can be very beneficial to have LGBT groups within a charity. So, for instance, what RSPC now has, it's definitely helpful to find like-minded people, and together in unity, it's more impactful. You can come up with different initiatives that can change the way the charity operates or sees things, as well as on larger scale. To also, specifically for Look UK, belonging to LGBT can be asked in applications form, both for mentors and mentee, obviously optional, and that way mentorship can be also based on those characteristics to explore essentially both sides of your personality and circumstances. But once again, it should definitely be optional, because not all people are still came to terms of this.
Yeah, but I suppose the mentoring partnerships are all based on trying to make connections with people that have similar experiences. And I think it's, like you say, it's not just about pairing up similar visual impairments, it's also about making sure that people have similar interests and might be able to support each other. And I think, right, by giving that option, it definitely allows something like the mentoring partnerships to run at a slightly deeper, more supportive level of the young people that we're working with.
What I'd say as well is that if, for example, you had a mentee who was, for example, questioning their gender and was maybe wanting some advice on that, for example, I wouldn't be able to provide any or much support on that because I'm not trans, but someone who was trans might be able to help, and that's something that they may be able to get paired up with. However, if somebody was questioning their sexuality and Look, for example, was aware that I'm queer and that I've been through that in the past, that's something that I would be able to offer advice with. So it's about pairing up people who will be able to help and support the mentees in the ways that they really need, and making that judgment call. And LGBTQ plus education is so important for that reason, because if staff members aren't educated about what LGBTQ plus people might need at all levels in all charities, you know, not just Look UK, of course, just everywhere. If people aren't educated, then people can't get the best support that they need. So the more education you receive and the more awareness you get out of this, the better.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing the very first training for Look UK, and this question actually were raised. So one of other mentors in training, she was part of LGBT, and she made it explicit that she is happy to be connected, and is that person also part of LGBT, that it's a double plus, because she's happy to provide support on that.
Always like that's always something I'd be okay to do.
Yeah, especially as mentorship and obviously LGBT is such important part of personality and struggles. So yeah,
and
it's
when you're
definitely
young, you
makes
want
sense.
someone to like accept you and to know that you're not the only one. Like if someone had told me when I was younger that there was an older person who was VI who was also queer, I would have been like, whoa. I didn't really know at the time that.
Yeah, because obviously even like from representations being actually knowing that those type of people are, and they are not just the way they are on TV. So
yeah, and it's always very negative, and the thing is, luckily it is getting better, but I do think people still have a ways to go about like more radical forms of queerness and about disability within queerness as well. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what society does and how they react to things.
The last question was, if someone was struggling with their identity or they were questioning their sexuality and feeling extremely isolated, what would your advice be to them? Or what advice do you wish you had had when you were younger, going through a similar experience of questioning your identity, but also being visually impaired?
I would say that you are not alone. There are other people like you out there. I wish someone had told me when I was younger that I would grow up to be a successful VI queer adult. I didn't know really anybody older than me at the time who was queer and who'd questioned their identity and come to some sort of realization. I really didn't know. And when I first started meeting people who were older than me, who had it all figured out, it was so empowering for me because I thought, okay, like I'm not just a fluke, like there's nothing wrong with me, I am completely fine. And if someone had told me that as soon as I'd come out, I think it would have made things a significant amount easier.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. You're definitely not alone. And I think trying to find people similar to you or remotely similar to is definitely very helpful, as for instance to accept my sexuality. The things that really helped me is seeing other people with similar interests. So for instance, I went to some sort of music fan forums and there were lots of LGBT members, and seeing them, understanding that they are also people and not as bad as sometimes media portrays them or just stereotypes. So it's definitely helpful to realize that it's okay and it's not a massive deal anyway.
Do either of you have a final message or a final thought that you want to share with the Look community?
I guess final message is be anywhere who you want to be. Don't be afraid to be something new or something unusual. Be uniquely as you are, and don't be afraid to get out of the box that was designed by society a long time ago.
My final message, I'd say, is if you are LGBTQ or you are disabled, stand up for your fellow disabled people and your fellow LGBTQ plus people. That includes trans people, gay people, queer people, disabled people, VI people, because we're all fighting a fight, and sometimes it can feel like we're very alone, and we're not. And we've got a lot of people who can stand in our corner with us. And I think it's really important to remember that we should be looking out for each other and standing up for each other when we can.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate both you and Alex for being so open and honest and sharing such amazing insights on how we can be more inclusive, both in the disability world, but also in the LGBTQ plus world. We want to say a huge thank you to everyone for being part of this honest and important conversation. Your stories, reflections and advice will no doubt resonate with so many of our listeners. To everyone tuning in, thank you for listening. Let's keep celebrating differences, challenging misconceptions and working together to build a world where everyone can thrive. Until next time, take care. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.